Good morning, everybody. My name's Anja French. I work for a UK NGO called Computer Aid International. We have been around since '98, and basically we take in computers from throughout the UK, which we refurbish, data wipe, and then send to schools, hospitals and charities across Africa and Latin America. And we have for a number of years been lobbying the UK government to put in place better e-waste measures to put a stop to the dumping of e-waste, and also to prioritise the reuse of electronic equipment over recycling. And we've been working with Buman for the past year, which Elena will explain about more. So in this presentation I'm going to speak about the policy prescriptions that we believe need to be put in place to put an end to e-waste, the problem of e-waste. Some statistics on e-waste. Around 20 billion items of electrical equipment, E, are in use globally, and this is increasing all the time. According to UNEP, 50 million tonnes of e-waste are generated now each year, and only around 10% are actually recycled properly, and in the developing world this is only 1%, so it's very small. And in 2008, according to the UN, 200 million computers and 500 million mobile phones reach their end of life. So the industry of electronics, it's very short life cycles, rapid obsolescence resulting in waste being generated at a rapid rate. We're always upgrading to the newest mobile phone, the newest computer, and this is often not even our fault. So for example, companies in the UK getting rid of computers, they might want to upgrade to the latest Windows version. They have no choice. They have to buy the newest computers to upgrade. So it's one of the greatest challenges facing the electronics industry due to the impact on the environment and human health, and usually in developing countries. So there is a big need to reduce, reuse and recycle more electronics. So why is there such a problem with e-waste? Well, it is incredibly valuable. In e-waste you've got gold, silver, platinum. So people want electronic equipment and at cheap labour in developing countries to pull out the gold and the silver from the equipment. To recycle it properly is expensive. This is why there's a continuous shipments of electronic equipment going to China and Africa, for example. It also contains lead, mercury and arsenic, meaning it's extremely dangerous for the environment and for human health. Often children working on dumping sites, taking out the metals from the equipment, and the people living around the sites. This photo here is of a Chinese farmer who's extracting the metals inside the wires for their value. And if it's not treated properly, it is very dangerous. So what can be done about e-waste? At Computer Aid, we believe the solutions are not that difficult. It needs to be financed by the manufacturers, and the governments need to be behind it. There needs to be political will to make these changes. And it's not just the governments and the manufacturers, it's also the consumers. We can buy less and we can buy green. So when you buy a new piece of electrical equipment, you can see who manufactures it. You can check on Greenpeace's website, for example. They've got a great list of greener manufacturers, and also they will list the worst, most environmentally unfriendly manufacturers. So you can choose who you buy your electronic equipment from. And when you do get rid of your computer or your mobile phone or another piece of electrical equipment, you can ensure you send it somewhere where it will be properly recycled at the end of its life, or even better, reuse it. So what should producers do? Well, Theodora was talking about the re-legislation in many countries in Europe, where producers are now responsible for funding the end-of-life equipment. And there is still a lot of progress to be made, but it is a good solution, I think. We are still lobbying for the UK government to implement it better and police it better, but it has definitely made a lot of changes in the UK. People are more aware of the importance of disposing of their equipment in an environmentally friendly way as well as a result of it. So producers need to make greener products right from the start. So when they recycle them at the end of the life. They will be easier to recycle and to do in an environmentally friendly way. They need to make longer lasting products, make repair, upgrade and reuse and eventual end-of-life recycling simpler. And also they need to provide take-back schemes, which is what the WE legislation legislates for. So their products are then recycled at the end of the life. So this cost, they can then put into the product, and then they provide that scheme at the end of their life. So governments also have a big role to play. They need to develop policies and laws that regulate behaviour and encourage best practice in electronic design, manufacture and use and end-of-life management. And we believe there are 6 things that governments should be doing. I'm going to go through each of these individually. So ban the import and export of e-waste. This is something that Computer Aid has been lobbying the UK government for a long time. We have the WE legislation in place, the Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment legislation, and it is legal for the UK to send equipment to other countries outside of the EU, but it still happens. And it happens because we don't have the funding in place within our Environment Agency to police it, and also to have people at the borders checking all the shipments leaving. But it is illegal, and if people are caught, they will be fined. So it's very important that all countries have bans on import and export of waste. So also in developing countries, they should have bans on the imports of waste from other countries. Each country should sign up to the Basel Convention on the control of transboundary movements of hazardous waste and their disposal. America is a country who isn't signed up to this, and there's a lot of equipment that's continuously leaving America and going to countries like Latin America and Africa. Countries also need to ban landfill and other dumping. This is extremely harmful. Sending e-waste to landfill pollutes the soil, water and air, and this is something that has been beneficial in the UK with having the WE legislation in place. There is no longer any landfill sites for electronic equipment. And also, valuable resources are lost if you send it to landfill, because you can get all those gold and silver out of that electronic equipment. It's also important that people prioritise reuse over recycling of functional equipment. Often people will upgrade a mobile phone after just 1 year, a computer after just 3 years, when there is still a lot of valuable life in that piece of equipment. For example, to manufacture one computer requires more energy it requires 80% of the energy that will be used over the entire lifespan of that computer. So it's far better to extend its life. And in my experience at Computer Aid, we'll receive computers from banks, for example, that are just 2 or 3 years old. And they then have a second life, and we'll send them to hospitals, schools, weather stations in Africa. And it's also a social benefit as well as an environmental benefit. It's important to compel e-waste recycling. E-waste, once it reaches its true end of life, must be sent to legitimate licensed operators. So there are a lot of operators who will say they are recycling equipment, but they're not doing it properly. So it's important to have legislation in place to ensure that they are properly recycling, so it is safe for both the environment and human health. It also helps your industry, because recycling creates jobs and creates profit. It's important to enact producer responsibility to fund e-waste management and promote eco-design. So an e-waste system must be free and convenient for consumers to use, and producers must be individually responsible for the full end-of-life costs of their goods to incentivise eco-design and develop domestic recycling markets. So producers then manufacture in an environmentally friendly way, or if they are responsible for the end of life of their equipment, they're going to be more interested in manufacturing it in an environmentally friendly way to start with. Hazardous substance bans need to be in place to make electronics manufacturers reduce and eventually eliminate the use of toxins in electronics. An ambitious collection of recovery targets to keep e-waste out of landfill and to incentivise the development of a convenient and effective e-waste management system. And at the moment they're talking about this in the European Parliament to increase the collection targets. And And the final thing is governments need to enforce it, so they need to monitor actors, punish criminal activity, because it's very easy to have a law in place, but you need to be able to follow it up and make sure it's not being stepped overseas, for example. So there needs to be stronger penalties in place. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
No questions. No.